So, what I want to talk about today is something that every single one of us wrestles with, whether you're in recovery or not, or how far along you're in recovery, and that is fear. Fear is a universal experience. It's in our biology, it's in our psychology, and if we're honest, it's often in the driver's seat of our decisions. But fear does not have to be the thing that shapes our lives. So, what I want to unpack today is how I think fear and faith are actually connected, and how we can move through different levels of faith to find freedom and peace and even joy, no matter what life throws our way. There's a story in the Gospel of Mark where there is a father who comes to Jesus because he's desperate for his son to be healed. And he says that famous line, "I do believe. Would you help me with my unbelief?" And that's not just a prayer, but it's the cry of the human heart. God, I want to trust you, but I'm struggling. I'm struggling with fear. I'm struggling with doubt. I'm struggling with control. So, my hope and prayer is by the end of this time together, you'll have a map of what the three levels of faith look like and some practical ways that you can start moving forward into deeper trust. So, let's start with, what is fear exactly? From a theological perspective, fear is not always a bad thing. God gave us a fear response. It's part of our survival mechanism. In the world of psychology, fear is called a primary emotion. It's the body's automatic reaction to some kind of threat. You don't think about it. It's a reflex. Your nervous system just responds. For example, imagine you're walking across the street and suddenly a car comes out of nowhere and it's about to hit you. You don't stop and analyze the make and model of the car. You don't say, oh, that's a Nissan Sentra about to run into me. And you don't ask yourself, how do I feel about this situation right now? You don't do any of those things. Your body just leaps out of the way, hopefully. And that is your fear response doing exactly what it was designed to do. God gave us the fear response to help keep us alive. And science backs this up. There's a tiny little almond-shaped part of our brain called the amygdala, and it fires when it senses danger. It pumps adrenaline through our body, causing our muscles to tense and all five senses to sharpen. It's kind of like God hardwired an alarm system into our body. It's important to understand that the Bible never condemns us or shames us for having primary emotions, such as fear or anger or happiness. In fact, when you look at the book of Psalms, that book is designed to teach us to process and pray our emotions to God, not to bottle them up. So, in a very real way, God wants us to regulate our emotions with Him. But here's the problem. When fear moves from being a momentary reaction to some kind of stimuli to a way of life, that's what psychologists call secondary emotions. Secondary emotions develop when we hold on to or we cling to a primary emotion. See, the root word in emotion is motion. Emotions are meant to be flowing. They're in motion. Like a wave, they show up and they crest and they fall and they pass. But when we hold on to fear and it becomes, instead of a primary emotion, a reaction, to some kind of danger or threat to an operating system for our whole way of navigating, it no longer helps you. And it's starting to take root in your personality. So instead of fear keeping you safe from a speeding car, fear will start keeping you from having that hard relationship with your partner, that difficult conversation that she wants to have. Fear will keep you from stepping into new opportunities because there's risk involved. Fear will keep you from trusting people, even trusting God. The Bible does warn us not to allow primary emotions to become permanent or a way of life. And one place it says this is in Ephesians, where it says, be angry. That's a primary emotion. Being angry is not necessarily immoral or wrong or a sin. God himself was angry. Jesus was angry. There's such a thing as righteous anger. But what this passage says is, be angry, but do not sin in your anger. And then it poetically says, don't let the sun go down on your anger. What is that saying? It's saying that the emotion itself is not the issue. It's what happens when we hold on to it and it begins to define us. Think about it this way. If you think about fear, fear is a primary emotion. But when we cling to it, it can become a secondary emotion of chronic anxiety. Hurt, for example, is a reaction to someone who wronged us in some way. This is a primary emotion. But when we cling to that hurt, it can become a secondary emotion, which is resentment. Or sadness and loneliness. These are primary emotions. But when we hold on to them, they can become self-pity or despair or depression. So here's my key point. Secondary emotions take root inside of us. They become our personality. They become a habit of our heart. They even become a part of our identity because we keep ruminating on them and rehearsing them. Primary emotions are like a smoke alarm. Secondary emotions are like letting that alarm keep blaring in your head until it becomes the soundtrack of your life. Well, how do I know if I have a secondary emotion that has taken root inside of me? One way we can know is this. We can no longer process and pray through that emotion and let it go to God because it's now become part of who we are. And we feel like we need it in order to navigate through life or to even stay alive. That's when fear becomes deadly for us. It is lethal to our soul. Why? Because the goal of spiritual fitness or spiritual formation is to become a person of love. 1 John puts it this way. There is no fear in love. In fact, perfect love drives out fear. Perfect love, the kind of love that we receive from God, casts out our fear. So fear is at the root of any kind of unloving behavior that we exhibit towards our partners. When we mistreat our partners, often the root of that is fear. It's the constant anxiety that makes us feel like we need to control and micromanage our lives to keep everything in order. For example, your fear of rejection can cause you to be defensive towards your partner. Your fear of losing control can cause you to be manipulative towards your partner. The Catholic theologian and psychologist Benedict L. summarized our spiritual journey as, quote, a decrease in fear and an increase in faith. So I want you to see how these are on a spectrum. The closer we move towards faith, the further we move away from fear. And conversely, the more we give into fear, the further we are away from faith. These are polar opposites. So how do we make that shift? What exactly is faith, and how do we grow our faith? So let's define faith. Faith is not a quote unquote religious thing. I would argue that every single human being has faith. I don't care what religion you subscribe to. I don't care if you are an atheist, if you are a Buddhist, a Hindu, a Muslim, a skeptic, a Darwinian materialist, even a nihilist. Everyone lives by faith because faith simply means trust. Right now, I'm putting my faith in this chair because I'm sitting down in it. I did not get down on the floor this morning and look at the attachments, the stability, the structure, the screws holding it together. I just simply exercise faith by sitting in it. I trust that it will support me. You put your faith in your car when you turn the key. You trust that it will ignite. You put your faith in your debit card when you swipe it at the store. You trust that it will work. You put your faith in your partner. You trust that they will be honest and loyal to you. Life would be impossible without faith. So the real question is not, do you have faith? Because every single one of us does. The real question is this: what or whom are we putting our faith in? Faith is like a muscle. You can grow it. But just like a muscle, it primarily grows through resistance. When we go through hardship, when we go through trials, when we go through challenges, that is actually the workout that can make our faith stronger. I have seen this personally in people who have walked with God for decades. They're some of the calmest, the most joyful, the least anxious people that I've ever met. And it is not because life was easy for them, far from it. They went through tremendous trials. But it's because they learned through experience that God can be trusted despite their trial. So faith is not a one-time event. It's a lifelong journey. And that journey often looks like moving through 3 different levels of faith. Let's look at the first one. It's what I call formula. Most of us start here. It's formula faith. It's an equation. It looks something like this. If I do blank, then God will do blank. If I do good, then good things will happen to me. If I pray hard enough, God will give me whatever I want. If I live a good life, then God will protect me from suffering. If I avoid acting out, then God's going to bless me with peace. If I practice my spiritual disciplines every day, then God will protect me from any temptation. If I raise my kids with good values, then God won't allow them to struggle, and they won't wander away from the right path. If I forgive others and I do step 9, then God will make all my relationships easy, and there'll be no conflict. If I work hard and I stay honest, then God will make me successful at my job. If I step out in faith and I take a risk, then God will open every door for me and there will be no resistance. If I promise to God that I'm going to change, then God will fix whatever situation I'm facing right now. That's formula faith. That's where most of us begin. I would argue there's nothing inherently wrong with this level. It's actually a good start. But here's the danger. When the formula doesn't work, our faith might collapse. I've seen this with people who walk away from faith. They followed all the, quote, rules, the equations, but then some kind of tragedy struck. Their child got sick, they lost their job, their marriage failed. And instead of God swooping in to fix it, it seemed like he was absent. And that's when you hear people say, well, I tried faith, but it didn't work. But really, what they're saying is the formula didn't work. It's not that God failed them, it's that the formula failed them. It's having a perception of God as if he's this cosmic vending machine. And if I just put in the right coins, a coin of prayer or a coin of meditation or a coin of doing the next right thing, then God will give me what I want. But here's the problem. God doesn't exist to serve you. God's not a vending machine. This level of faith will work until life breaks it. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Because when your formula doesn't work, it can push you towards the next level. The next level of faith is what I call trust. Level 2. This is where our faith shifts from formulas to a relationship. We no longer think of our higher power as a cosmic vending machine. We begin to see him as a loving, benevolent Father who is worthy of our trust even when life doesn't make sense. This is when our faith begins to mature. Instead of controlling outcomes, we start to trust God even when we don't know how things are going to turn out. When we have this level of faith, this is what we are basically saying. God, I don't understand this. I don't even like this, but I trust that you're with me. Here are some characteristics of level 2 faith. You trust in God's character, not specific outcomes. Level 1 formula faith is based on what does God do for me? But at level 2 faith, it's based on who God is, even if I don't get what I want. It's also at this level of faith that we begin to live in tension. What I mean by that is when you're at this stage of faith, you can hold two things in tension at the same time. One, I believe that God will heal me. But second, I trust him even if he chooses not to. This is where our spiritual maturity can really grow. It's that place of tension where there's unanswered prayer, there's waiting on God, and there's this uncertainty, but we're still okay. Finally, at this level of faith is when we begin to rely upon our relationship with him. Our relationship becomes more intimate. We're no longer negotiating with God, saying, God, if I do this, you'll do your part, right? It's more like, God, I don't understand, but I'm not letting go of you. So at this level of faith, level 2, where we trust in God, it's no longer about if I do this, then God will do this. It's about a relationship. We trust him not because of what he gives us, but because of who he is. Now, there is a third level of faith that is the deepest level of faith. It is the level of faith that the 12 steps wants to lead us to. And that is surrender. The transition from level 2 to level 3 is a monumental shift because we're moving from trusting God with outcomes to completely letting go of outcomes. This is the highest level of faith. This is where we stop clinging to outcomes that we want and we simply cling to God. We see this kind of faith in the life of Jesus. The night before he was murdered, his prayer to God was, please spare me from this. However, not my will, but your will be done. That is surrender. Let me clarify. Surrender doesn't mean that we stop desiring things. It means we release our emotional attachment to needing those things in order to be okay. My okayness is no longer tethered to outcomes. It's tethered to God. Spiritual writers of the past call this, quote, detachment. One example is Anthony DeMolo, who said, there is one thing that causes unhappiness, attachment. What is attachment? It's the emotional state of clinging to something that you believe you cannot be happy without it. So if you think about it, our anxieties usually reveal what attachments we have. If I'm anxious about money today, it's probably because I'm attached to financial security and I can't be okay unless I have a certain amount of money. If I'm anxious about my kids, perhaps I'm attached to a certain image of how their life is supposed to turn out. And if it doesn't turn out that way, I can't be happy. If I'm anxious about my health, perhaps I'm attached to the idea that I can only be happy if I have a certain level of health. But here's the paradox. The more we cling to outcomes, the more anxious we become. And the more we release to God the outcomes, the freer we become. When I think about what level 3 faith looks like, I think about Paul. This verse beautifully describes surrender. He's writing it in prison. He's about to be murdered. And here's what he says. I have learned the secret. I love that phrase. I have learned. He wasn't born with it. This secret didn't come natural for him. It developed through experience and time. He says, I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether I'm well fed or I'm hungry, whether I'm living in plenty or in want. How do I do all this? I do all this through Him, through God, who gives me strength. Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, I'll learn the formula for getting what I want from God. He says, I learned the secret of being okay no matter what happens. I'm in prison. I'm about to be killed, and I'm okay. That's level 3 faith. That's surrendering the outcomes to God. Our spiritual ancestors called this peace or serenity, or in the Greek language, it's called apatheia. Now, what word comes to mind when you look at that word, apatheia? We think apathy. But that English word is not exactly what the Greeks were talking about. Apatheia is that inner calm that you see in people who have walked with God through suffering. And they come out on the other side with this deep, quiet trust in God. It's the kind of faith that says, even if my very worst fear comes true, God is enough. Even if I lose everything, I can't lose Him. I don't even need to be afraid of death, because even death cannot separate me from His love or His presence. Saint Teresa Vella put it this way, let nothing disturb you. Let nothing make you afraid. All things pass, but God is unchanging. You who have God, you lack nothing. God alone is sufficient. Surrender leads to freedom. That's the deepest level of faith. Here's what we don't like to think about, though. The typical bridge from level 2 to level 3, from trust to surrender, is usually pain. It's when He doesn't heal us. It's when He doesn't give us that job we're looking for. It's when our prayer is not answered. That's when surrender can break through. When we allow grief and disappointment and pain to do its work inside of us, we could come out with more freedom, with less fear, with deeper faith, and with more surrender. In order to do this, we're going to have to learn to practice detachment every day, possibly multiple moments a day. This does not mean we don't care. It just simply means that we present ourselves to God with open hands. In fact, the ancients used to pray something called the welcoming prayer. It kind of reminds me of the serenity prayer. It simply says this: I let go of my desire for control, security, and approval. I embrace what this moment holds. I let go of my desire for control, security, and approval. I embrace what this moment holds. I welcome this moment. So let me try to summarize the three levels that we've been talking about. It's okay if you can't see this table. I'll quickly run through it. With level one faith, our view of God is he's this cosmic vending machine. And level two, our view of God is he's a loving father who can be trusted. And at the deepest level, level three, our view of God is he is our beloved. He himself is the prize. At level one, the core question is, what can I get from God? But at level two, the core question is, will I trust God with this particular situation? But level three, the core question is God enough for me? At level one, our motivation is a transaction. God, would you minimize my pain and maximize my comfort if I do blank? At level two, the motivation is a relationship. We have confidence in his character and who he is. But at level three, the deepest level of faith, our motivation is love. We have more of a desire for God than we do outcomes. At level one, the way we respond to a crisis is we become disillusioned. The formula failed us, so God therefore must not care. But at level two, our response to crisis is perseverance. Even if I don't understand, I know that he is good. And at level three, our response to crisis is peace. Even if my worst fears happen, he is still enough for me. The tone of the relationship in level one is distant. It's contractual. The relationship in level two is closer. It's more honest. Our faith can now live in the tension of unanswered prayers or waiting on God. But at level three, our relationship is deep and calm and intimate. There is less striving. There's less anxiety. There's more resting. There's more peace. Finally, at level one, our typical prayer is, God, I did my part. Now you need to do yours. At level two, our prayer is, God, I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I still trust you. But at level three, our prayer is, not my will, your will be done. You are enough. So as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a few questions that you can ponder and reflect on. Number one, where have I been living with a formula kind of faith? Thinking if I do blank, then God has to do blank. Number two, is there a situation in my life right now where God is asking me to trust him, even though I don't know the outcome yet? Number three, what are the attachments in my life that are creating the most anxiety for me? What are those things that I feel like I absolutely must have or I won't be okay? Number four, what would it look like to hold those things with open hands instead of closed hands and to actually pray authentically, God, not my will, but yours be done? Number five, which level of faith best describes where you are right now? If you took an audit of your life, Is it level 1, 2, or 3? And finally, what's one step that you could take this week to move deeper, to either move from formula to trust or from trust to surrender? No matter what level you are today, God's with you and God's patient with you. He meets you right where you are. It's okay if you're wrestling with formulas. It's a good start. It's okay if you're learning to trust Him more. Or perhaps you're learning to let go and to fully surrender. He is inviting you to go deeper, deeper into freedom, deeper into peace, and deeper into love.